Hello, everybody, and want to welcome you to another segment of Bloomfield Avenue Podcast, where the streets come alive. It has been a hot minute since I have done a podcast, and I couldn't think of two better gentlemen to start off the festivities again. And we're going to have a good time. We're going to talk about a business, something that they're doing, which I think is going to be fabulous. It's going to be very helpful. So I want to welcome to the program JC Glick. JC, how are you today?
Hey, how are you?
All
Thank
right,
you for
great. It's all good. And Michael Ostrolenk. Mike, how are you?
Good, Dr. Dan. Good to see you.
Good to see you all again. So listen, I'm just going to go over their bios, and you're going to see that these are quality gentlemen. JC, retired lieutenant colonel from the U.S. Army, leadership consultant. His last assignment was director of Victory College. He has a master's degree from the Naval War College, which I'm going to in September. There's a half marathon, JC, in Jamestown, and I've always gone to the Naval War College. Master's degree in National Security and Strategic Studies, 3 Bronze Stars, 3 Meritorious Service Medals, author of 3 books. The most recent is Philosophy of Lifting Heavy Things. Welcome to the program. And Mike's been on the podcast before, and he has 23 years in resilience and a relationship coach. He's a master coach and head instructor for SEALFIT Unbeatable Mind Academy. He's a martial artist. He and I share that. TKD, Krav, I've done both of those. Director of Human Resilience on Appearanzo, I think I said that right. Personal Development, Resilience, and Holistic Well-Being. Gentlemen, welcome to the program. So you guys have a program that's ready to go. So tell us about this program. Go ahead, JC. What do we got?
Usually Mike starts us off.
All right, Mike, go ahead, Mike. Go ahead. You know what?
That's awesome. All right.
All right, go ahead. I'm sorry, JC. Mike, go ahead.
No,
Go
it's all right.
gusto.
I'm just going to tell you, you get like the dumb guy response, and then Mike would come in and he would fix everything.
He kind of cleans. He's done that with me before, just to let you know, JC. Like he'll clean it up for me, and he'll, say no, this is the way it is. All right, Mike, go ahead. What's going on?
So that's awesome. So JC and I have partnered. We've created a program, a 6-month program called Resilience Optimized. It's a men's group, and we will be meeting once a week for 6 months. And it's a kind of a whole person, whole system approach to resilience. So there's a lot of resilience programs out there that kind of look at just the physical, like carry heavy loads long distances, or like JC likes to joke around about the boats or the logs and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And completely nothing wrong with physical training to develop your resilience, mental toughness, emotional resilience, etc. That's all cool, but our program is much more comprehensive than that. So we're looking at physical resilience, mental resilience, emotional resilience, spiritual resilience, and interpersonal resilience. And each month we're breaking down into a theme, what I just named, and going to a deep dive into each one. And it's not just educational, it's a support and accountability group too. We're basically creating a tribe of men who recognize that, hey, we've done well, like we're at 1.0, and we need to take ourselves to 2.0. And that's what we're here to do as a tribe, as a group, is help them move to the next level of their abilities, survive and thrive in.
So survive and thrive. I love that. And I have so many questions that I want to ask. So JC, how did this come about? What was like the genesis of this program?
Nice.
So I will tell you that, I've been friends with Mike for a long time.
I'm sorry to hear that. How much does he pay you per month to be his friend? I want to make sure I'm getting enough. That's all.
So I'm going to tell you that in the darkest moments of my life. So when I was, I struggled a couple of times when I stopped deploying. So I did 11 combat tours.
Mm-hmm.
And about 18 months after my last one was my first suicide attempt.
Oh my goodness.
And I met Michael, I think through Mark Divine.
Mark Divine,
right. I will tell you that I credit 3 people with kind of my recovery, and I had 4 suicide attempts in total, 2 in uniform, 2 I left service completely. And that is my wife, my service dog Lightus, and and Michael, because you want to talk about a guy who met me when I was at my worst and has stuck with me and stayed with me and made me better. And when people ask me, I coach a lot of people. And when people say, "Do you have a coach?" You say, "Yeah, it's Mike Ostrolenk." I mean, that's my coach because that's the guy who, I think I'm a pretty resilient guy.
Mhm.
And when I need help on resilience, I went to Michael. And I also think, and I love him for this, is he's on the cutting edge of, human behavior and how to optimize human behavior.
Mhm.
And that's always, I love that innovative take. So Michael and I have been friends for a very long time, and we have always wanted to collaborate on something. And we finally, I've written a lot about resilience. I've, it's been in my books. We've talked a lot about it. And I think what I was getting frustrated with is, and Mike was right. I do joke about this, right? Like there's this false bravado, and maybe it's not false, but there's a bravado that goes along with being resilient of, who's going to carry the boats? Who's going to carry the logs? You got to go run 100 miles before. Yeah. I just, that seems not real to me. What seems real is I have to go to the supermarket today and oh my gosh, I really don't feel like peopling today.
Mhm.
Right. Or I have to go, I have a new puppy and I got to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning and make sure it doesn't have an accident. And those small challenges during the day, that's what trips us up in being resilient. Right. So Michael and I talked about that and we agreed. And so we said there's got to be a way that we can help people who already have resiliency, like the big muscle movements of resilience. These are resilient people, right? They're successful, they've done good things, they've been positive, but now they're looking to take it to that next level. And I do think, look, there's nothing wrong with the lifting logs and carrying boats and taking a picture of your watch at 4:30 in the morning because you're getting up and working out. That's that's awesome. But I think those are the basics of
Yeah.
resilience. I think the nuanced part of resilience, the more mature part of resilience is how do I deal with a relationship that's really important to me? How do I deal with internal conflict? How do I create opportunities? The older I get, a lot of stuff seems easy. So how do I create opportunities to continue to challenge myself, which made me successful when I was younger?
Mhm.
And I think that idea set is something that Michael and I both share, and one that I think we really want to collaborate on with a group of individuals who are as dedicated as we are into being better tomorrow than we are today.
Mhm. That's a great response. And thank you for being vulnerable and thank you for your service to our great country. Again, we were talking about that off air and that's just not set enough at this point in time. Because to have a retired lieutenant colonel, you know, Army Ranger to go through this, again, to me, it's just despicable that that's the way it goes. However, you meet Michael. Michael, take us back to when you first met JC and what did you do to help him out?
Wow. I wow. That's a man. I
I,
feel
you,
more
you know
comfortable
me,
if you.
Michael. I always ask loaded
Yeah, I think.
questions. You don't get anything easy here.
I think I'd actually prefer if JC feels comfortable sharing what I might have done for him. Then I don't feel comfortable sharing in a public forum like what I did for him. Like I just
So
if that
yeah,
makes sense. Kind of
look,
weird.
no,
Yeah, I understand.
absolutely. And that's and also that's the humility and modesty that I absolutely appreciate from a guy
Mhm.
like Michael.
So Mike,
It,
if
the,
he if JC starts, maybe you can paint
Sure,
broader strokes to help out.
sure.
the first thing is he has been consistently there for me
Mhm.
with zero judgment. And he's seen me, you know, through a divorce and struggles with, talking to my kids about that because I was the villain and the inner struggles. And he's
Mhm.
seen me, start a new relationship and there was always judgment. I always felt judged throughout, when somebody's looking at you, second
Mhm.
guessing what you're doing, the decisions that you're making. I never got that. I was always accepted for who I was, which
Mhm.
is incredible. It's incredibly powerful, especially when I come from a culture, and I love my culture, where you're judged by what you do and
Mhm.
accomplish, right? I mean,
Mhm.
being a ranger it's every day is selection,
Mhm.
right? I mean, selection's an ongoing process, so it matters. And I never felt judged, and he was always curious. It's something that I love about him to this day, is he continues to be more interested than anything else. Like, what can I do for you? What can like it Sometimes I always feel like I get off the call and I'm like, I, I need to ask him more questions about what's going on with him.
Mhm.
He's just one of those guys, and who continues to make you feel like you are the most important person in the world that he is talking to at that moment,
Mhm.
because he is so engaged with you. And I
Mhm.
think that between that, and then there were all the things that he would say, hey, try this, try this, try this, try this. What do you think
What
about
were
this?
a couple of things that he asked you to try to help
What
you
was
out?
the ear thing? What was that?
Alpha stem.
Alpha stem, right? And you have to understand. So my wife she's a lawyer, and she is suspicious of everything, and she
Just by
is
nature.
wicked. She's a Oh, she is. And she's a wicked, like, Dr. Snob, and she
Mhm.
just doesn't like trust is not, she loves Michael. She loves him, and she doesn't like anybody. And, you know, he would recommend something, and it's like, okay, we're gonna put these things. Well, Michael will be able to explain, but basically you put these things on your ears and you put on this machine and you tune it,
Mhm.
and she's like, oh. And I expected to hear from her like, what's this all about? And I did. I got like, okay, what do you got going on there? I'm like, well, Michael's saying. She goes, oh, we'll give it a try then. Right? I mean, it's just that's just so. Go ahead and talk about how Alpha
Yeah,
STEM
Alpha stem
works.
is great. It's an FDA approved device, electrical currents to the brain. It's used for anxiety, depression, insomnia.
Mhm.
It's been shown to be effective for people with PTS because they share some
Mhm.
of those symptoms. And that's something I thought JC would benefit from, which you did,
Mhm.
which is awesome. So I sent him my device to experiment with.
Mhm.
He gave me his device. He didn't
Yeah.
just send it. He gave it to me. I mean, that's like that's who he is.
Yeah, and I can add in here, I've known Mike now for a while. He's been on the podcast a couple of times, and he and I talk every quarter, every couple of months. We're both busy. And Mike has been always very, very generous. We talk, we share stories, and he's very curious, and he's helped me out a lot. We spoke earlier today, and every time I speak with Mike, it's always enlightening because he gives me a different perspective on the way to look at things. Now, being a retired lieutenant colonel, I mean, you always had that physical aspect of it, right? Mike, talk to me about the mental aspect of what this program does, mental emotional aspect of it. What does that look like?
Yeah, so it's really interesting. JC and I were just talking about this a little bit ago. There's a concept that came out of SEAL Fit called 20x. You can
Hmm.
do 20 times more than you imagine yourself to do, but capable of doing.
Hmm.
Our mindsets are limited, and we can do a lot more. And as a result of working with some type AAA personality types,
Hmm.
I had the realization that for a lot of people, doing more, better, faster is not the challenge for them.
Hmm.
Actually, in many cases, doing less and sitting with themselves and uncomfortable feelings and thoughts and sensations that might emerge was much more challenging for many people than doing an Ironman or the marathon or a CrossFit workout,
Hmm.
whatever it happens to be. That's
Hmm.
I want to do a physical thing. And I find that to be true for a lot of people because we are in our culture, we don't have a lot of time for self-reflection,
Hmm.
for just allowing whatever emerges. We have a lot of distractions. I mean, I'm surrounded by distractions, iPhone, iPad, computer. And then we have easy access to food, which can easily distract us. We have easy access to porn or Netflix or whatever our thing is to distract us from our own experience.
Hmm.
So for us, one of the big things we want to see men be able to do, this is just the emotional resilience, is being able to sit with whatever arises in their own system without the desire, the need to distract themselves away from whatever they do to distract themselves. And the resilience is like being able to sit, and it literally could be like a minute. I could only do it for 10 seconds, and I can do it for a minute, and I can do it for 5 minutes, and I can do it for 10 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
I'm able to sit with just whatever uncomfortable thoughts and feelings and sensations arise in the body. That in and of itself is a huge thing. Being aware of it, being able to articulate it, and then being able to express is a whole other level of things. That's where the kind of interpersonal resilience can come in. And then also emotional resilience is like, can I, as a partner in person, like, you know, my spouse or my girlfriend or whomever I'm with, they're having whatever they're going through in their life. You know, I have a lot of female friends who call it, they're messy. They get their messy space.
Mm-hmm.
Can I sit with whatever's happening for them without my need to fix them because I'm uncomfortable?
Mm-hmm.
So emotional resilience is not just sitting with my own feelings, thoughts, sensations, but like, can I sit in their storm with them and hold the space for them? That's another way of thinking about emotional resilience.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not just with your partner. It could be with your kids, it could be your
Mm-hmm.
parents, it could be a workmate, whomever. But can I sit strong, powerfully with care and compassion in that fire or in that storm, or however you want to, metaphor you want to use? That's one way to consider emotional resilience.
You know, you said something a few minutes ago that just really resonated with me, and somebody near and dear to my heart, and somebody very special to me. And Mike, we were talking about this earlier today. You know, I do come from that culture of more, better, faster. I mean, I'm quintessential, right? JC, you're like this. I mean, you're retired Army Ranger. It's more, better, faster, right? And sometimes that really doesn't work because there's just a collision. Do you find that to be true, JC, in your life? Is that in part
I
what
think
happened to you?
I think it's the world. I
Yeah.
think I think that's
Yeah.
every place. It's everybody. I mean, every business that I work with or team that I work with, it's more, better, faster, you know, et cetera. And it's this idea that we can control outcomes.
Mhm.
And you know, we were just talking, Michael and I were just talking about this. Is I don't believe you control outcomes. You can control things that you believe will lead to the outcomes you
Mhm.
want. But the outcomes themselves, yeah, that's like the enemy gets a vote. Other
Mhm.
things impact those things.
Mhm.
And understanding that is important. And I think helps build resilience, right?
Mhm.
The sooner that we realize that tomorrow the world can look 100% different to us
Mhm.
because of an act that has nothing to do with us.
Mhm.
And to accept that is really, really important.
Yeah.
But I think, but to your point, I think the world is that. And I think what we need to do is come to a place where maybe we start thinking to ourselves, is does it need to be faster? Does it need to be more? Does it need to be better? And to what end?
I think there's a limit to it, right? Because I mean, the person is definitely going to be listening to this, and so she knows that I'm working on this, and you know, more, better, faster. When you were brought up the way I was brought up, I mean, that's just the way your mind runs. And being a retired, you know, U.S. Army Ranger, that's just the way it goes. I mean, you just can't. And Mike, you must have seen this a million times in your private practice with men where they do that, because then what happens, it doesn't work, right? You fumble. And it's not that you're doing anything malicious, it's just that you fumble. Mike, can you speak to that just a little bit?
Yeah, so I would just challenge partially what you said. I would say better, stronger, faster can be a useful construct at times,
Mm-hmm,
depending
mm-hmm.
on the person, the situation,
Right.
and the outcomes one's seeking. But it seems to me there's a dynamic homeostasis within the human system, within the cultural system, within ecosystems. That if you move too far, too fast, too quickly in one direction, you're gonna have to bounce back to the other.
Mm-hmm,
That's why one of the things JC and I were talking about quite a bit earlier was like sleep, diet, nutrition, stress management, time in nature, the circadian rhythms, the 24-hour day and night cycle.
mm-hmm.
Like, if we don't live within the biological framework, within the ecological system we live in, we cannot do that. Cool. And then we can see the increased rates of all these diseases that we're facing as a country or
Right.
globally. But if you can live within the constraints of our biological systems, within the constraints of the ecological systems, and live more healthily within a 24-hour cycle, and the certain foods you might want to eat, and sleep, all this kind of important basic physiological factors, then you're more healthy. You're more able to thrive. You're more able to do the,
you know, those kind of things too. But then you also recognize that on the other side of that, there's consequences, or there's cost, or there's recovery needed. You know, so like JC and I, you know, we actually like to do hard physical things. Like I'm always impressed by JC. He and I did this 10 crucibles a while back for YouTube. And like I do the more mental, emotional ones, and JC put out these amazing physical ones. Like, holy shit, dude, those are awesome. Awesome. It's awesome to challenge yourself physically. And when you do, you need to rest. You need to recover. You need to get the proper nutrition. You need to get the proper sleep. Those kind of constructs are really important to keep in mind. We need a much bigger framework in our heads as we move forward, especially in the world we live in, where, like JC said, like tomorrow, boom, technological advance, you know, state actor might do something, natural disaster, God knows what could happen that could just change our lives completely. But we need to have the capacity, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, to deal with it more effectively and efficiently.
Yeah, I
And that's
think
where
that's. And JC, you were brought up as a man's man, right? I mean, looking at things emotional and mental is not a lot of, you know, is not a lot of what was done perhaps in our generation growing up in Newark, New Jersey. It you know, you weren't getting in touch with your feelings, in other words, right? Did you have a difficult time with that?
Yeah, so I'll tell you that I didn't have a great upbringing. So I wasn't taught to be anything when I was younger. What I did, I will tell you that when I started in the Army, I think I had a view of what being manly was. And then I went to combat and I learned what being a man really was. And I think that it was, you know, my evolution actually happened in a place where you wouldn't think that it would happen. It happened during, you know, 11 combat tours, where I started to figure out who I really was, and kind of that sensitive side. The problem became is I can show my sensitive side to you, but I can't show you that I can't be vulnerable. I can be sensitive and sympathetic and empathetic,
I was just
but I can't be vulnerable, because at the time, and I think the military is much better about this now. At the time, vulnerability was not prized, and I think it would make a lot of people feel really uncomfortable. Now I think, you know, for example, there were maybe a handful of people, less, maybe 3, who knew when I was in the military what was really going on with me at the end. But I think as I got older and started to, you know, realize a little bit of, you know, what's authentic for me is, yeah, I gotta be vulnerable.
Especially if you're involved, you know, you're married, you know, there's that vulnerability, right, Mike, that you have with your spouse, because if you don't have that, you have that wall, and then you have a lack of communication, you know, and sometimes it's difficult and sometimes it's not so difficult to be vulnerable. Mike, what are your thoughts on that?
You know, it's interesting, because I would say there's like a couple different stages of vulnerability. And first one, just awareness. You know, a lot of us, due to cultural conditioning, family of origin type stuff, are not taught to be self-aware. We're not taught to feel our feelings and really think about what we're thinking about and feel our sensations in the body. You know, there could be messages. I'll give you something to cry about. Oh, I better not cry. We're not angry in our family. I better shove it down. Like, you know, or even like happiness. Like, there's nothing to be happy about. This world is horrible. And like, oh shit, I better not be happy. Like, so we learn not to be aware of like our own internal states. If you're not aware of your own internal states, you can't modify, manage, and change your internal states. First thing. If you're not aware of them, then you can't articulate them. You can't share them with another human being, which makes relationships intimacy
Mhm.
really challenging. So, one of the things we'll be doing for our men's group is like, oh, okay, how do we help the men deepen their own self-awareness about their own internal processes, and then give voice to that and express it just to us as a group, as a tribe, and feel comfortable enough to do so. Even if they're uncomfortable, like, let's push the envelope so you can feel comfortable eventually doing that. Then how do you take that that expression and bring it into with your kids or your parents or your workmates or your spouse in a effective way?
Mhm.
Because a lot of us, even if we're okay to feel certain things, we're not necessarily skilled at expressing them.
Mhm.
So like, okay, we will teach, because that's part of this program, is like, okay, not only how do you feel deeply about something inside yourself, but how do you express it in such a way that it's useful to the relationship,
Mhm.
useful to you, useful to your partner, useful to the relationship. That's also an important part of being vulnerable, is expressing the vulnerability to a second person in a
Yeah.
useful way.
Tell me about the spiritual aspect of this. People may be sitting there saying, "Oh, is it the universe? Is it God? Is it some form of religion? What is that, JC?" I mean, I saw your face light up. What is the spiritual aspect of this?
Yeah, and I think it's whatever your relationship to the world around you is, right?
Mhm.
I think we can label it however we want. We're humans. We need to have
Mhm.
sense making in order. So whether it's the universe, it's God, it's
Mhm.
Buddha, it's whatever it is.
Mhm.
But it's being able to understand, one, where are you? What is my relationship with the world around me in that sense? If that's a Christian, so what does that mean to be a resilient Christian?
Mhm.
If it's Buddhist, what does it mean to be a resilient Buddhist? If
Mhm. Mhm.
it's, hey, I'm agnostic or an atheist, great. What does it mean to be resilient for you?
In there,
Because
right?
you have to be in touch with the world around you, regardless of how much of a hermit you are. My wife and I hardly go anywhere, but when we do, we have to interact with people. And how are we resilient
Mhm.
in those interactions? How are we resilient in the world around us when the world is filled with challenges? Do you seek them, or do you avoid them, or do you meet them where they come? And I think there's three different ways to spiritually enter the world, right? I can either seek the challenge to technique, I can avoid the challenge. Okay, maybe a less optimal technique, but we should probably talk about it. Or you can meet them when they come. And I think that's, what's my path and why is that my path? And how do we move you maybe from the least optimal, which I think are the two sides, right? I,
Mhm.
I think that if you're looking for challenges, like, hey, what, you got a problem? You looking at me? I'm here from New Jersey, I mean, that's
Forget about it. Yeah.
um,
You're living right across the Hudson, so you
that's right.
understand.
And like, hey, Long Island, we got our
Forget
own.
about it. Yeah.
So I think going and looking towards, how do I move from these sides and kind of focus in this medium place where I'm not looking for trouble, I'm not avoiding trouble, but I'm meeting trouble where it comes.
Hmm.
And I am being deliberate, right? I control the things that only I can control. My not my eventual attitude. I never control my initial attitude. That's a reaction, not a response. So I
Hmm.
can't control a reaction, but I eventually can move it to a response. How do I control my perceived preparation? Because you never know if you're prepared until after the event,
Hmm.
right? I can practice, 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 practice. I think I'm doing good until I'm not successful in my event, in which case I did not prepare enough. And then my perceived effort, which is, and I think Michael's already talked about that. I, we always have more in the tank. Our brain stops us so often. So how do I control, this attitude, this preparation, this effort in these moments where I'm meeting challenge?
Right.
And I think that's the spiritual side, is
I love
interacting with
that.
the world.
Right. And I think that when you avoid life, if you will, I think that life has a tendency to come back at you, and it has a tendency to make the lesson that much more difficult. Is that you? Do you find that, Mike, with your clients?
I do. Yeah. If you don't look, was that great story of the flood,
Hmm.
and the boat came by, and the guy says, "Oh, no, no, and I don't need the boat," and keeps going higher and higher and higher, and
Hmm.
finally rounds, and God's like, he goes to St. Peter, gets to see God, and God's like, I sent people on the way to save you, and you kept denying it.
Mhm.
Same thing. Like one of my favorite stories, there's a guy I spoke at a conference, and I was so inspired by his story. So I pulled him aside and I was like, how did you get into what you're doing? It's kind of in our field, psycho-spiritual stuff. He said, well, I had a normal life. Like he might have been an insurance salesman, normal life, mortgage, car, blah, blah, blah. He said he was at a bookstore, and a book literally fell off the top of his shelf, hit him in his head, fell on his feet, and opened up. He picked up the book, and whatever he read changed the course of his life.
Mhm.
And the joke was like, I'm sure, like if he hadn't paid attention, God would have had to hit him even harder. But God tried to wake him up to something, try to wake him up to something. He's like, come on, dude, I'll throw a book at you. And he finally wakes him up. If he didn't pay attention to the book, he probably would have been hit by a car or whatever the next iteration of like, wake up, wake up, wake up. So I do find that if we don't pay attention to lessons, they come back harder and stronger.
Oh.
And I just want to speak real quickly to the spiritual stuff too. Agree with everything JC said. Another piece of our work, and I kind of put this in the space, is values. We will work with our guys, like, what are your values? What do you claim to be the values that drive your life?
Mm-hmm.
And when we work with people on their values, we want to get really clear what behaviors would indicate to you you're living out your values. And then we track them over time, because like, are you in alignment with your values? If you claim to be, I want to be more caring, compassionate, loving, or have more integrity or honesty or honor, or whatever your things are, and then we look at your life, you're like, oh, I don't think those are really your values. What's going on? Maybe they aren't your values. They're socially constructed, and you're like, right, I don't want them. Or maybe they are, and you just don't know what behaviors you need to do to embody them more fully. Or maybe you need some accountability and support. Cool. Whatever it is, we'll work with you on it. But I think in our program, values also play an important role, kind of in the spiritual sense of how one is living their lives.
Mm-hmm.
And are you actually embodying your values on a daily basis?
Because if you're not, go ahead. I'm sorry, JC.
Oh, I'm sorry. And how is your life aligned with those values, right? And where are you not aligned, right? Because I see so many times, especially in veterans, where they have very clear, I mean, they've spent time in an organization that has very clearly defined values. They take a lot of those values with them. And then the first job they find, you'll find that 5 or 6 of those values are not met or reinforced in this, or like, so they go to places that don't align with their values. So it's not just what are your values and how are you living by your values, but is your marriage aligned with, are your relationships aligned with your values?
Mm-hmm.
Is your work aligned with your values? Is the way you mentor or receive mentorship aligned with your values? So it's that it's the values and the alignment of those values and those values in context, right? Because, I tell this story all the time about, we all say we want our kids to have integrity. I want my kids to have unbelievable integrity. Great. Do you want them to tell grandma when her food sucks? And it's like, well, no, I don't want to do that. Right. So it's not really integrity that you're looking for. You'd like honesty, which I think has a little bit of kindness in it, which is I'm not going to hurt anybody's feelings. So if I have to say, I really appreciate you made these for me, grandma, they're great. That's okay. And being able to really help people kind of make sure that their values are clearly defined, because I think we, in today's world, we have completely lost touch with what respect means, because we're very quick to say, well, I've been disrespected. Really? Have you been physically hurt? No. Well, then you haven't been. Right.
What if somebody says, JC, that they've been mentally or emotionally disrespected?
So I love that. You feel like you've been emotionally disrespected. And if you feel like it, you have. But now here's my point. And Marcus Aurelius said that if I believe I've been harmed, I have been.
Right.
But that gives a lot of power to somebody.
Right.
And what I always say is, so you want to give the person that you said disrespected you, who you don't like, and you don't like their view, you're going to give them the power over how you feel. And as long as you can say, yes, well, then I think you need to recognize you don't control what they say. Yeah. They have a choice. Now, most of us choose to be like, oh, you think this is respectful if I do this instead of this? Okay, whatever. Right. I mean, I want to treat you the way you want to be treated. I really do. If if you're important as a human being, and I believe you are, then I'm going to do what you'd prefer. And if I do something that you don't like, it certainly wasn't intentional, and you should tell me.
Yeah.
That said, if you decide to be injured, morally injured by something I said, then you've given me a whole lot of power. I always give this example, right? Some dude slams the door in your face. Did they disrespect you? I have 80% of the audience will say yes. And I'm like, no, they just did. Unless the door hits you, they might have been rude. They might have hurt your feelings. They might have been inconsiderate, but they didn't disrespect you. They just didn't consider you. And I think that's what we really should be talking about is, hey, that's an inconsiderate person. That's a discourteous person. Disrespect, like, but we've gotten these words, and words
Are powerful and meaningful.
They're really important. And so what we've done is and here's the other part that I don't understand is in today's world, and we're getting a little off topic. I'm sorry, but
That's
you got me
okay.
fucked.
No, this is great. This is great. I think that, a lot of men are going to be listening to this and they're going to be fascinated by what you're saying.
In today's world, we seem to care more about what people say than what they do.
Right.
And that shocks me. I will have my feelings hurt by what somebody is saying as opposed to the actions of a person.
Right.
That I will allow to happen. And I see that on a daily basis. Well, they said this. Okay, did they hurt anybody? Did like, okay, they said it. And that doesn't always mean I agree with what they said. But I also know that if they're saying it, I mean, we could talk about, inciting violence or whatever, but saying something and doing something are very, very different. And I think we should be more concerned with what people are doing than trying to police up what they say.
Right.
Because when somebody says something, it's a gift. Because now I know a little bit more about who you are. If you say something that I find offensive, maybe I know a little bit about you. That's a gift. Thank you.
Right. And now what you can do, if you don't like what that person said, if you communicate it back to them, maybe you can sit there and say, you know what? I'm sorry. I didn't look at it that way. And perhaps I need to change my behavior or my thought process. Mike, what do you think about that?
So when I work with clients, I offer them 3 ways of thinking about how they engage with a second party, their partner or their best friend or their parent. One is it something they need to do for themselves? Is it something they need to do for the person? Or is it something they do for the relationship? And in most cases, I would highlight what's going to be beneficial for the relationship. And everything you guys just talked about is perfect. Like, oh, wait, you give me a different perspective. I could think about it differently. Let me reflect on my behavior. Maybe you didn't say it so skillfully. Maybe I don't like your tone and volume, but your message is clear. Let me reflect. Cool, that's awesome. There are moments that I've found especially with people who are a little bit more people pleasing, put it that way, where for them it's less at very particular times, it's less important on the relationship, but more important for them to stand up for themselves and create a clear boundary and to say no, if whatever the situation might be. Like, I'm not going to put up with this behavior from you anymore, right? That can be really important for that person at that particular time. Generally speaking, depending on the type of relationship it is, I completely agree with you guys. Like, let's have the conversation. Let's be more intimate. Let me ask you questions. Let me be curious. Let me look at my own behavior. Let me introspect, and let me reflect back to you. Yeah, I can partially find some truth in what you just said. The way you said it didn't land well for me. Let me explain why. Cool. And then you can deepen your connection. They understand you better. You understand them better. That's awesome.
That's great. And that's where that's like a home team type of a situation.
Yeah. And I would say majority of the time that's perfect. And on occasion, you're like,
that's what I like.
Yeah, I can't, it's not about them. It's not about us together. It's about me. And like, I don't want to put up this behavior anymore. I need a clear boundary. Cool. Okay. For you, that's important at that very moment. Generally speaking, I like the relationship angle. I'm trained as a marriage and family therapist. So I'm always thinking relationship wise,
Now, JC, if you can be a little bit more vulnerable, I think that's a better way to put it. After working with Mike, what did you see in yourself? What was that like? Days got better, the sun is bright, shining a little bit brighter, the flowers are a little bit more aromatic. What was that like for you?
I think that we all need somebody who's a thought partner in our life who asks us questions that I heard it's a silly quote, and let me see if I can get it. Well, it's a silly source, but it's a great quote. Sometimes we need help from someone else to do something on our own. It comes from this Netflix show called Loudermilk, it's a great show. And what Mike did was he provided me with questions that I should have been asking myself. And it wasn't necessarily an awakening that was like, oh my gosh, look at this. It was a realization, right? Awakening, I think more of as an epiphany, right? As opposed to gradual realization where it's not overnight. You start to ask these questions and the answers don't come right away. They come over time. And you have to have somebody to like Mike to bounce them off with. And I think that I can tell you where I am now and know that, we've been friends for like almost 10 years. This has been a long journey.
I think he
And
probably pays you a little bit more money than to be his friend. I'm like at 8 years, 7 years. So I think you're getting a little bit more. I'm getting too large per month. You must be getting 3, maybe 3,500. I don't know.
but I'll tell you that where I am now is in a place, and I've shared this with him because I think it's really important that he knows, because he's a guy who's been with me this whole time, that he knows that I'm happier than I've ever been. My life is absolutely amazing in every way. That doesn't mean I don't ever feel bad. I do, because it's life. And sometimes I have, shame or guilt, or I do something and I go, oh, that was horrible, or I fail. But I'm in a place now where I have a great support system, right? And I think when you're at this level where you don't know who you are, you don't know what you are, you don't know, everything is, when you stop deploying and you were a warrior, and then all of a sudden, well, what am I? I'm still a soldier, but I'm not a warrior anymore. I define myself as this. So you lose a sense of identity. You then get out and you lose even more scaffolding that was kind of holding you together. And a guy like me, I was like, no, I'm going to get out. I'm going to go be something completely different than what I was. Well, that was dumb, because there was a lot of that I liked about what I was. So why would I be a totally different guy? And but it took a long time to come to that.
Yeah.
And I
What's
think
useful, what's not useful, what can you carry on from being a warrior? Can you approach this particular situation with being a warrior, but being a different warrior, if you will?
Well, and I think that's what, and changing your mentality of what being a warrior was. What great book is Way of the Modern Day Samurai. And understanding that, anyone can be a warrior, right? It's about how do I look at the world, and how do I attack it? Do I flow with it? I mean, what are the things that I do in what moments? And I think, what I think is everybody's looking for this. We're an instant gratification society, right? We want a quick fix, as opposed to stop worrying about this day when, again, yes, the flowers smell better, the day is brighter because I'm happy more often. But as important is the journey that got me there. I mean, I can still clearly remember being upstairs on the 3rd floor of this house with a gun in my mouth, and understanding the journey that I went from there, and remembering those highs and lows along the way to get to this place where, we had a setback the other day, and I was like, okay, well, boy, 4 years ago, I would have handled this really different. 5 years ago, I would have handled this really differently. And I like how I'm handling it now.
Right.
So
It's that maturation process that you've gone through with everything. And so,
I think that's what we're trying to offer. I think that's what we want to offer others, is the journey. It's not so much, we were talking to someone about, I don't want to fail at this. There is no failing at this because the outcome is not as important as the journey to get there. The destination is less important than the journey. The journey is the destination, so to speak. While we're doing this together, you're going to be you're going to be more resilient.
Right.
But don't worry about being more resilient. Worry about I want to have this hard conversation. I want to do this tough workout. I want to think about how I interact with others. I think that's what we're trying to do.
And listen, I think this is great. So for all the men that are out there, it's like the challenges in life are going to come. How do you get over them? How do you learn from them? What is that outcome? That's what I'm sensing here. You want to come out on the other side, right? On a positive light, because it's just simple. You're with your spouse. And listen, we all get hit with financial stuff every now and again, right? How do you overcome it without breaking it up and not continuing on? It could be anything. I mean, maybe you did something, maybe somebody did something, you're with your buddies and you did something. How are you able to at least resolve this conflict, right? Because life is tough. I posted something, or I didn't post something, but the social media company said, choose your hard, right, Mike? Right? Choose your hard. Marriage is hard. Divorce is hard. Which one do you want? Making money is hard. Going broke and not being smart with your money is hard. Which one do you want? I don't know if I'd like the word hard, but I think the point is, how do you learn from all of this? Okay. Now,
and I think, can I just, I want to,
of course,
I think that's really, this is another thing that I'd like people who come into the conversation or come to the course to know is, I don't know that life is hard. I think we make life hard. I think we sometimes, life is life. Life is life. And it's our attitude, eventual attitude, perceived preparation and perceived effort that either make it harder,
right,
or not as hard.
Right.
So life is life. And that's one of the things that, I talk to veterans sometimes. Oh, it's so hard to be a veteran. No, you're making it hard to be a veteran. It's no hard. You know what? It's also hard to be a single mother. It's also hard to be a married mother. It's also hard to be a married father. Life is as hard or not as hard as you decide it is. So life is life. And then we put these adjectives on it. And then those adjectives frame our ability to respond to it. And what we want to do is help people maybe reframe some things so that they can go into them a little bit different.
Yeah. Listen, we're almost at an hour, and I think we could probably go for another couple hours if we were all together. And maybe we were rucking somewhere, right, Mike? And and so forth. When's your next rucking adventure? Are you going to be anywhere on the East Coast soon?
So JC and we put together a team called Team Futishin, and we're doing a 50-mile go ruck in May, I think 4th or 3rd, May 3rd or 4th in Washington, D.C.
Oh,
that's our upcoming challenge. I can't speak to what happens after the 4th. So we're training up for that for sure.
Oh, gee, you know what? How does an old guy like me get involved in that?
You say you want to join, and we'll talk to you offline.
All right, we're gonna do that. I'm into this.
Nice.
So, who is this program for? Both of you. Who is this program for?
So, any man, I would say, late 20s up to late 60s in that space.
So that just disqualifies me because I'm in my early 20s.
Well, there's going to be there's going to be a general level of maturity required, because
Right.
I said, and JC said too, like it's 1.0, we're making it a 2.0.
Right.
And to say an 18-year-old or 19-year-old or 20-year-olds,
They're not ready.
individuals who, through their life conditions, are already at 1.0 and they're very mature for their age. Cool. Generally speaking, most people we're going to attract are going to be in their late 20s
Mhm.
to late 60s, somewhere in that space. Either they're just starting their life, family and marriage and workspace, or they're like, oh, what's next? Like as we head towards closer to retirement or anywhere in that space in between those places. And they're like, what's next? Like, how can I take my game to the next level? How can I go from 1.0 to 2.0? How can I show up more fully as the man that I know I'm capable of being, both on my own, with my partner, with my family, with my friends? One of the things we haven't spoken to, and I'll just speak to real quickly, is impact.
Mhm.
Great. We want these guys to go through our program and go from 1.0 to 2.0 in terms of resilience. That's not enough. What kind of impact are they going to have in their family life, in their communities, in their workspace? That's just as important to us as well, because you need to take what we teach, what you learn, what you embody, and bring it into your world. So
Mhm.
impact matters.
Yeah, I love that. So for all of the men out there in their late 20s into their late 60s, I recommend this program. I'm going to be speaking with this gentleman, after this podcast, because I think that this is something that's important. I think that it's needed in today's society with the way that individuals, are acting and behaving, specifically men. And I think that this is something that could be extremely beneficial. When does this start?
We're starting late March.
So
Yeah.
you're going to start in late March. You don't have a
Yeah.
specific date yet, okay?
It's
And
one meeting a week for 6 months
for
for an
6 months.
hour. And there's going to be a homework. Like this is not like you just show up for the hour and talk and get support and help be accountable.
So this
There's
is
going to be work to do.
ongoing. This is ongoing. After that
Ongoing.
hour, you're going to have homework. You got to come back in and you got to discuss, and you got to tell individual, you have to tell the both of you what's going on and so forth and so on. And they can use these tools in all aspects of life, like we said, and they can use these tools once this is done with. You can use these tools that you've learned for the rest of your life on this earth.
Amen.
Yeah, I love that. All right, so there is going to be a link that we're going to have, and we're going to put that link into the show notes. And this is going to go all over the place, gentlemen, wherever I am with my podcast. I have no clue because, I don't know. There's this company that puts it all over the place, and I'm going to give it to my to my assistant, and they'll take care of that. And I want individuals, I want men. There's only like 6 spots left, right? If I'm not mistaken, approximately 6 spots left.
8.
There's 8 spots left. So jump in on this. This is an investment in yourself. How much is the program?
It's $6,000. It's $1,000 a month. If you pay in advance,
This is, yeah,
it's $1,000 off.
this is an investment in yourself, right? This is an investment in yourself. And this is something that everybody needs to do that are men and they want to take their life to the next level. All right, we got like 2 minutes left. JC, final words.
Thank you for having us. Thank you for letting us talk about this.
Mhm.
And thank you honestly for allowing me. I don't always get to tell Michael what a huge impact he has been on my life. So thank you for giving me that opportunity to maybe share. I think he can do more for more people. So that's why
Yeah.
I'm excited to do that with.
Mike, you get the last word. Actually, I get the last word, but you get the last word out of the guest.
Thank you, JC, for your nice words and stuff. There's a meme I saw on Instagram. I spent way too much time on Instagram. Said, do you have a guy you can call at 3 o'clock in the morning? And literally last night, JC, I was thinking about this. I was like, man, if I needed to call someone at 3 o'clock in the morning, I actually would call JC.
Mhm.
So it's mutual, goes both ways. So thank you, my friend.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, Mike, you've always been very generous with your time with me. About a year ago, you had said to me, you have the wand. What do you want to do with your life? Actually, it was at the end of, what are we in 2024? This was at the end of 2022. I think you said to me, you have the wand. What do you want? And I thought about it, and now things are happening, and I'm very excited about that. So all the male listeners, get into the program. There are 8 spots left. That's all there is. Let's get into the program. There's going to be a link to get into the show notes, and let's make this happen Let's become the best versions of ourselves. Gentlemen, thank you very much for coming in. It's been a pleasure talking, and maybe we'll do another one just before it launches. Let's see what that looks like. And I want to thank everybody for listening in. I haven't done a podcast in a while, and I feel pretty good. So I'm going to be podcasting away, and it's going to be exciting. So Dr. Dan's saying goodbye. Get into the program. There's going to be a link, and we'll talk to everybody soon. Take care.